Are you an ADHDer who spends too much time in her head ruminating either on past mistakes or catastrophizing future events that haven't even happened yet? If so, you're not alone. So many of us with ADHD struggle with rumination and spiraling thoughts, and in this video, I am going to give you 3 tips to stop rumination in its tracks so that you don't end up spiraling. I have ADHD and pretty much a PhD in rumination and spiraling because I am guilty of wasting countless hours playing out movies in my head, though 99.9% of them didn't actually play out the way I created they would with my vivid, self-deprecating imagination. So I wanted to make this video to help others who might struggle with this. And if you are female and late diagnosed with ADHD and struggle with rumination, low self-esteem, your temperament, and mood, then I would love to chat with you to see how I can support you. There's a link to book a call with me in the description of this video. I'm an ADHD coach, and supporting women is what I've dedicated my life to. As I mentioned, I have struggled with rumination and spiraling thoughts so many times, I practically have a PhD in it. I have ruminated on what people think of me. I have spiraled over future events that haven't even happened yet. And I have wasted countless hours replaying conversations that have already happened where I felt like I stuck my foot in my mouth. Let's begin by doing a quick thought exercise together. I want to get your wheels turning by asking you a few questions. Do me a favor and close your eyes. I want you to remember the last time you were spiraling, specifically creating a mental movie based on a future event that hadn't happened yet, but something that was causing you some angst or worry. You might even have maladaptive daydreamt about this event, and time flew by as you were daydreaming about the worst possible scenario of this future event. And for anybody who doesn't know what maladaptive daydreaming is, it's something that's common for ADHD people. It is basically daydreaming about something that's already happened or something that could happen, but doing it so that it feels real and you almost lose track of all time as you're daydreaming. All right, keep your eyes closed. Do you remember where you were when you were ruminating on this future event? I want you to think about that place. Do you remember how you felt? Do you remember where the angst and the worry showed up in your physical body? Do you remember how each of the different scenarios played out in your head before this event even happened? Now I want you to think about how you felt right after the event you were worried about happening. Did the sky fall the way you thought it was going to? Did you end up getting fired? Did that person you were worried about seeing end up writing you off? Did you lose absolutely everything? Now, sometimes things are as bad as we imagine them to be, but most of the time our imagination makes a situation way bigger and scarier than it actually is. And it's recalling events just like this that have already happened that didn't end up being as bad as you thought they were going to be to remember the next time you start spiraling. Something that I think a lot of ADHD people forget, a lot of people in general forget, is you have survived every single day up until this point. And although ADHDers tend to get a lot more bumps and bruises, both physically and emotionally along the way, our imaginations and our rumination over the things that we're scared of or the things that we're reliving are usually, most of the time, bigger than we make them to be. By thinking about and reliving this situation, hopefully that gives you a little bit of evidence to back that a lot of times our imaginations are not our friend. Tip number 1 to not spiraling is to realize that you are in the present moment, not that future event, and to draw on past memories of how our imaginations can take over when we're not in control, and remembering that we're actually in the here and now. And the same goes for reliving an event that has already happened. Let's say you stuck your foot in your mouth and had a conversation with somebody, and you have some buyer's remorse on something you said, and now you're absolutely spiraling. And you're thinking about what you said over and over and over again. You're stuck in that past event, repeatedly playing a mental movie. If you catch yourself doing this, then that's a huge win, because catching yourself maladaptive daydreaming is the act of being present. And it's not to say that you can't deal with this situation of maybe apologizing for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time to somebody, but is ruminating and spiraling about it a good use of your time to rectify the situation? To stay present, you can either focus on your breath or you can do butterfly taps. I love these. You just lock your thumbs together and then take turns with each of your fingers patting your chest. It is a great way to stay present as well as to calm your nervous system. This is a work I do to support ADHD women. So if you'd like to chat with me about how I can support you, the link to book a call with me is in the description of this video. Tip number 2 is to become the detective to your thoughts. When we are ruminating or maladaptive daydreaming, we are tuned into raw emotion, not logic. The emotional part of our brain activates our fight, flight, and freeze response. There are no rational thoughts here, so if you can capture a moment of being present and then get curious about your thoughts, just like a detective would analyze a crime scene, that is a great way to balance your raw emotions with logic. So when we think about being in law enforcement or being a detective, if a detective was to get called to a crime scene, the detective would have to very objectively investigate that crime scene. The detective wouldn't say, well, I feel like this happened, or I think this happened. The detective would be looking for evidence, things that are very black and white. Does the person in question have an alibi? Is the DNA that was found at the crime scene match the DNA of the person in question? A detective wouldn't have a touchy-feely approach to whether or not they thought someone committed a crime. It would be very black and white. So inviting the detective in, that logical entity, into your thoughts to combat the emotional part of your brain is a really great way to, for one, be in the present moment, and for two, to get curious about what you are telling yourself and your imagination as to how this situation is actually playing out. So bringing the detective into this situation, that logical entity, is a great way to balance the emotional part of your brain that feels all the things and thinks all the things. Now, if you're already completely emotionally dysregulated, this can be a little bit hard, but if you're able to catch rumination before you start completely spiraling, then it's a little bit easier to draw on being the detective to your emotional thoughts than if you're in the eye of the storm and you're spiraling out of control. And this is a perfect segue for tip number 3. Tip number 3 is really there for you to draw on if you are too far in and you can't use that detective, that logical entity. And that is just to get away from your thoughts and the thing that you're ruminating on. Get outside and go for a walk. Call a friend and ask them to come over and visit with you. Make yourself a snack. Use the butterfly technique to calm your nervous system down. You can get a pack of frozen peas or frozen vegetables and put them on your forehead or your neck to regulate your nervous system. Put on a funny show. Do anything you can to get away from your own thoughts so that you don't continue to spiral or fall into hours and hours and hours of maladaptive daydreaming. Let me know in the comments if you're going to use any of these tips, and if you have any tips of your own, please share them with us. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you feel validated as an ADHDer who might spiral with your own thoughts. There's a link to get on a call with me in the description of this video, and I will see you next week in the next video.